Hi, Dr. Nurse Podcast Nation. Welcome to the podcast. Today we are chatting with Joelle Jean. She graduated from the New York University in 2005 with a bachelor's in nursing. She worked in a general pediatric emergency room labor and delivery experience. Then she went back after it looks like 10 years. She required her master's degree and became a family nurse practitioner. And she's now a full-time senior writer for the nursejournal.org. She lives in New York City with her husband and two adorable children and a cat named Zuzu. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you about what you're doing because I've had multiple nurse writers on, and I really like this role because I feel like there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of things you can do with it that a lot of nurses aren't aware. So I can't wait.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. So kind of describe to my listeners what it is that you do as a full-time senior nurse writer and kind of what your job looks like day in, day out.
Yeah. So, as a full time nurse writer, the whole process is pitching ideas, finding interviewers, and then writing the article. So, it's a very small team, nursejournal.org. There's me as the internal writer, then I work with copy editors, copy editor. Then it goes through publishing, and then the article comes. We meet about, twice a week. Bi-weekly. And we just really pitch ideas on what is trending in nursing. I write for their blog. It's the News and Advice. So whatever's trending, whatever I find is very dear and near to my heart, I will pitch the idea. We'll either vote yay or nay, and then we, go out and find interviewers, nurses to interview. I write the article, I do research on the article, then it goes through the whole editing process, and then it starts over again. So
wow. And you guys put out a journal. Is this like a monthly journal?
It's daily. An article goes out daily.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you guys are putting out content every day.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And so when I was looking at the website and seeing the staff, you're the only nurse on the staff, correct?
Yes, I am the only nurse on the staff. Yeah. Again, it's a small team, so eventually that may change. But yeah, they realized that they needed an expert writer for the site, and serendipitously, I ended up getting the role because I was writing maybe a year prior to that. I met another nurse writer, Portia. She's at The Right Nurse on Instagram, and she's a program where she was looking for nurse writers. And I've always loved writing, like ever since I was a child. Love writing. But I became a nurse, but I still wrote on the side, and I ended up finding Portia, and she basically emulated everything that I was. She was a nurse, she was a writer, she was African American, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do. So I did freelance writing with her for about a year. And then this position came up right at the heart of COVID, where I was a nurse practitioner in a clinic, and it was nuts.
And you had two babies during,
and I have two kids.
Were you doing home care on top of work?
Oh my God.
And
so
it's crazy.
I know. I think I have post-traumatic stress syndrome because I'm trying to think about how we did it. But my mother-in-law
I blocked it out.
Yeah. I try not to think about it. But my mother-in-law was very instrumental during that time. She took them. My oldest one did remote learning. And my little one was just turning one, right at the height of COVID. So he wasn't in school or anything, but my mother-in-law took them. My husband and I, when he was off, he would, take care of them. And when I was working, whatever. But I was away from, I know this is going in a whole different.
No, this is important. Because it's what you had to do to keep working. Yeah.
My husband works in healthcare too. So in the height of COVID, she took them for 6 weeks. She was like, don't even come over. Oh. We had to see them through the door. It was so traumatizing because we didn't want to get them sick. She was like, if you guys.
Because you're in healthcare.
Yeah. So we didn't want to get them sick. We didn't want to get her sick. She was just until we figure out what's going to happen. you guys, I'll take care of them. So she took them for 6 weeks. We went to visit them like every couple of days. So traumatizing, but
That is
we made it
traumatizing.
through.
My goodness.
Yeah. And then during that, I was writing, and then I realized like, oh, this position came up, and I applied and interviewed, and the rest is history.
What I love about this too is that it actually kind of gets you out of that COVID, where you're kind of in the COVID line of fire, working in the
Yes.
healthcare, because
Yeah.
now you're working from home, right? And
Yeah.
so you're able to kind of take your kids back from your mother-in-law,
Yes.
like, be my babies. And
Yes.
so, yeah, you can bring them home, and, she doesn't have to be a full-time mom again, and you can actually see your children. How did you get to this specific spot in your career as you've been kind of going through? I know you've worked as, emergency room, pediatrics, and then labor and delivery, and then just kind of transitioning. What made you go like, I don't think I want to be at the bedside anymore. I don't think I want to be clinical, like in the trenches type work.
Yeah. I mean, I think I became a family nurse practitioner. That's one of the biggest things I miss is the patient care.
Yeah.
I don't miss the bureaucracy and all that nonsense that happens with being a clinician. I miss my patients terribly. How writing has always been a passion of mine, like forever, for as long as I can remember. I always loved creative writing. I wanted to be a children's book writer for a really long time. I was like in a critique group and everything. Then I realized how hard it was. And I was like, it's really hard to get published. So that
Which
was
is surprising, because I'll read like books to my kids,
and
to my kid, and I'm like, this is the lamest child's book I've ever read. Like, how did this get published? And so, but yes, there is a really fine line between like Goodnight Moon, and then there's the other books.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a really well-known children's book, really great writer. So yes, a lot of it is who you know. Some of it is who you know. But it's a lot of work, like putting in all those queries. Like you have to like get a literary, you have to like query your work, which is like send the letter out to pitch your idea and then get picked up. I never went that far, so maybe I gave up too early, but
you can always go back.
Yeah.
Especially
it's still
now.
Mine.
Especially as like an established writer now, like you could come up with a nurse book or something. Don't give up on that dream.
and like minorities too. There's not a lot of books for minority children. So yes, it's still a passion of mine, but I was writing with Portia, like I said earlier, and a lot of it had to do with imposter syndrome, right? So you think like, I'm not that good of a writer. Like I can write, but I'm not the best. I don't write for the New York Times. You know what I mean? So you think like, oh, I have to be able to be this like well-written, well-read, established writer. But in actuality, the reader just wants fast, So as long as you can get that information out to the reader and it flows really well, then it's not that difficult. So being with Portia really helped me get over that imposter syndrome, like me submitting an article and I'm like, what do you think? She's like, Joelle, just let it go. It's fine. It's good. It's edited. It's published. Once you see that happening over and over again, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I do kind of know what I'm doing. I went for this role. I had a portfolio, luckily, of articles were already published. And I was a nurse. It was basically a job that was written for me. So, so I really, I went for it, and that's where I am today.
Throughout this journey, as you've been kind of getting to this spot as nurse writer, there's been moments that have been hard, moments that have been easy. Would you give me an example of a moment, kind of like what you said, like with the imposter syndrome, or a situation that happened that you're like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, but then you just kept persevering and you kept pursuing your dream?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like constructive criticism. When you start getting that in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's not the best work, but it's really just crafting you to be a better writer. Like just because you forgot a comma, doesn't mean, or it's in passive tense versus active tense, like doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It's just that building up that confidence and knowing like, what you're writing is really for the audience. I don't have I mean, there's some articles that I write now that my editor was like, maybe it needs a little bit something more. Like we need like a little bit more, better interview quotes or something like that. So that's when you're like, oh, your ego gets a little bruised. But other than that, I haven't had anything super duper
like traumatic.
Yeah.
What you're describing is the ability to get feedback and to see it as a gift and to see it as something that is making you stronger instead of like, man, this isn't for me. I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not getting 5-star ratings every single time. You still have to keep going, even though that piece wasn't your best work, or, they think something else might need to be added. It'll help grow your skill set a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
What were you going to say?
Yeah. No, I was going to say that it's just so opposite from nursing. Like nursing, it's like life or death, right? So you kind of really, really need to know what you're doing. And I think I took that with me in this new role, like, self-criticism, like, it's not good enough or whatever, but you learn like, okay, you could just erase what you wrote and rewrite it.
That's a good perspective. You want to think that you're a perfect nurse. You don't have to have and carry that weight of, I'm not perfect. It's like, no, I get to just erase it and write it. I think it's really good that you said that you had mentors along the way, somebody to kind of help you kind of get to where you needed to go. Is there even anybody else that's inspired you as you've been kind of in this new role as senior writer?
Yeah, my number one fan is my husband. He's amazing. So supportive in all my endeavors, more excited than I am in whatever I pursue, which is great. And I have my family. My family's super supportive. I mean, I come from a very traditional Haitian background. So my dad's like, writing? Like what? I thought you were taking care of patients, but no, I mean, they're super curious about what I'm writing. Like send me this article when you're done. And I wrote an article about like nursing within generations. So I focused on like a Haitian family. It was like a mother, a daughter, an aunt, and they all were nurses. And they talked about their experience of how hard it was to come to the United States and having to take over nursing courses, and just that camaraderie and that I guess their ribbon of how, they stay together. And a lot of it, even though it's different generations, they still had the same experience. At the end of the day, they loved nursing. And I was really privileged enough to actually write that story for them, which I love. Like that's what's the golden nugget of writing, just like being able to tell someone's story.
I think it's interesting that you said when they came over, because I know a lot of foreigners, when they come from other countries, they're educated to be physicians and nurses, and then they get here and they're told you can't practice. So they have to retake all these exams. And I've had other minorities, people from other countries that have come over and they're like, no, I'm a nurse over there, but I had to redo everything to come over here and work. So it's actually really admirable to see how they kind of humble themselves and get right back into being a student nurse again. One of the things I'm just curious about, what are some of the topics that you write about with the nursejournal.org? Because as I was looking through it, you guys create content, and this is why I think what you're doing is so important, and for nurses to hear and to see what you're doing, because you create content around scholarship money, you create content on like how to get from where you are right now to being a travel nurse. And that's somebody that like doesn't even know that they want to be a nurse, how to become a nurse, they're not a nurse. Like you walk them through all the steps. The journal is a great resource for any nurse or any person considering being a nurse that's like, I don't even know where to get funding to go to nursing school. I don't even know. Pitch your nursejournal.org to my listeners to get them to figure out, why would I check out what she's working on?
Yeah, I mean, our brand is really about like uplifting the nurse voice, right? We want to grab you at all milestones, and nursing has very many, like maybe 8 or 10 milestones, right? You're like thinking about nursing, you become the nursing student. You can either become a nurse's aide, an LPN, get your associate degree in nursing. You can get your bachelor's degree in nursing. You can decide to do forensic nursing. You could decide to be a travel nurse. You could decide to be a community nurse. So we really try to like pinpoint where these nurses are in their whole journey of nursing, and we just really try to educate, that group, that community. You want to be like the resource that everyone goes to, right? Well, that
Yeah.
all nursing prospective students or experienced nurses go to just get information on the career, then the nursing career.
Yeah. And that was the thing I was noticing as I was looking through, like, oh, this is what you do if you want to go into the military, to have them pay for your nursing degree. Like, it is a plethora of information. You just have to literally click and you're in a spot that's teaching you what you need to do to get to where you want to go. So I just think for nurses, again, that are looking for different career options, that are like, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to go do something else, but how do I get there?
Yeah.
You guys are a great resource. And again, it's written by a nurse. You have nursing contributors on your on staff. And so I think there's a lot of great information that you guys are putting out that, again, would help nurses. I know you miss bedside and caring for patients, but now you're caring for nurses. So it's definitely, again, people are people. So you want to care for all. And even though it's something different, it's still that same mantra of providing care. And I think that's really, really neat. And so if you could go back at the start of your career and give yourself a piece of advice, something that you wish you would have told yourself at the beginning of your nursing career, what would you tell yourself?
Wow, that's a great question. I think what I would tell myself, like, now I know there's so many avenues to nursing. You literally can do anything with a nursing degree. I think I would explore a little bit. I stayed in the emergency room for a long time because I loved everyone I worked with. So I stayed there for like 11 years because you're just the people make where you work.
That's true. That's true.
But I would have liked to maybe experience more of like the tech side, maybe do informatics, just figuring out like a little bit about what that is about. Just not to not take it seriously. You definitely should take nursing seriously, especially your first couple of years, but not to be afraid to explore other options. Like we were talking earlier, like nurses never say no to anything. We're multitaskers. We're interested in pretty much everything. So just not being afraid to like try new things. And if it doesn't work out, there's always a nursing job waiting for you. There's a shortage. It will still be there. It will still be there.
Yeah. No, it's true. So many nurses get on and say that exact same theme of like, don't worry, there's always something there for you to just kind of step back into and to go back to. So why would you stay if you're unhappy? Because that will always be there. So go try this thing that you might find enjoyment in. And I agree with you, the right boss, the right people, are all the things that you need to have a really, really good career and a job that you don't want to leave. If you're missing any of those elements, your boss is not great, or the people that you work with aren't great, or it's just not the right time in your life, or whatever it is that you're going to be miserable at your job. And I think that's another good thing for a nurse to hear, just that it's okay if you really like where you're working, you like who you work with, and you stay a little bit longer because the people are good. I think that's important, and it's sometimes really, really hard to find. So if you find it, hold on to it. And so for the last part of the interview, it's the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Alrighty. So we already know your favorite subject in school was creative writing.
Yeah.
What was one subject that you didn't like learning in school?
Oh my God. There's so many. Well, you know what? I wasn't the best student. Like I really wasn't. I loved to write. I loved like communications, marketing, all that stuff. The things that probably was my worst subject. Oh my God. I loved psychology, but it was introduction to psychology.
Yes.
Was so hard.
Yes.
I had to take it over because it was
I took nutrition twice. I took nutrition twice too, because it was a struggle.
Another one, you're like, oh, I know how to eat.
I know how to eat, not doing well, dropping it. Like, I don't understand. Yes.
You're like calorie counting times what? Feeding the nutrition.
Yes.
Okay, we can't even figure it out. Imagine like the regular person.
Oh yeah, what a disaster. No, it's totally a bad system. But I remember that class. That was one I struggled with.
Nutrition, intro to psychology, statistics.
Yes, stats. That was another one. They make you take it
Yeah.
every year too. It was like, oh, healthcare stats. And it's like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Gosh, never use that. Why did I have
Yeah.
to? I'm just kidding. I
Yeah.
do use it sometimes,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I know.
What was your very first job that you ever took?
Ever? Like
Ever.
when I was
Ever. I'm talking like ever.
I think it was a babysitting. I guess it would be
Okay.
Yeah.
You were a babysitter. If you had to give a book to someone, what would be a book that you would just be like, this one?
I love the Outliers.
Oh, are
I
you
think it's an
talking about
Outlier from
Malcolm
Michael
Gladwell?
Gladwell. Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell. Ooh.
So good. Like
Book.
if you think you can do something and you're afraid, just go ahead and do it, because these people were not supposed to do what they ended up doing, and were successful at it. There was a need and they went for it, and it's a great book.
Yes, I love Malcolm Gladwell. He writes 2 other books that I love. It's called Blink. That book, fire. If you've never read it, it will blow your mind. And then the other one is David and Goliath. I'm a sponge around anything he says. I'm like, how do I like absorb what it is that you're saying and talking about? Because he's just so smart.
It's based on like facts.
Yes. It's one of those statistics that we hated. He loved it. And so we're glad he loved it, because now we get to benefit for how he makes really difficult concepts just really easy to understand and put it in ways that you can that are palatable. I like that word. It was so wonderful chatting with you today. Thanks for coming on the podcast and describing and sharing what it is that you do and how you developed your career and how you found something that lights you up inside, that brings you joy. Yes. And it gives you the kind of life that you want. That's what this podcast is all about. It's about hearing stories from other nurses who went for their dreams. They just went for it. And sometimes that's entrepreneurship. Sometimes that's this role that they didn't even know existed, or they didn't even know that they could morph their career into. And it's going for it and giving it all you got, not looking back, burning the ships. Yeah. Just going, I'm burning the ships, man. I'm not going forward.
Yeah. You get more, you feel more confident with experience. So it's like, even if, now I'm at that stage where I'm like, okay, go for the dream.
Yeah. And again, I can't wait to see you when you write your children's book, because I think that dream I'm not going to let die for you.
We'll see. But I would love to write about you, your podcast. So definitely I will reach out and definitely put an article about that. Definitely.
That would be awesome. I would love that. I'd totally be down for that. So just let me know.
Okay.
Alrighty, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. Check out Joelle. Check her out I'll tag her on all her social media accounts so that you can see what she's doing. Check out thenursejournal.org, because again, like I said, there's a ton of information on there that if you were thinking about switching roles, or you want to go for that nurse practitioner role, they've got all the stuff on there that you need to be successful and to be able to figure it out. You don't have to work really hard. They did the work for you. So check them out, guys. And as always, enjoy the journey.